Hey there, Annette. Hi there, Pat. Nice to see you guys today. We're just going to give this a minute as people start to trickle in. But please let me know, how did you guys enjoy this past week? How did you guys enjoy positive 2 weather this week? You guys can let us know on the chat down below. Don't forget to not just send things to all panelists, but to all attendees as well. So as people will be trickle in, we'll just get started as there is a replay. So I just want to say good afternoon. I hope you guys are all doing very, very well. And welcome to another one of our Changemaker 20s. As always, I just want to thank you for spending your afternoons with us. Whether or not it's cold or it feels like May, you guys are here. So thank you for that. If this is your first time, this is a platform where we do get to chat with our subject matter experts in an open forum for all of you guys to get to talk to them, ask questions, and speak to them directly. And so if you do have any throughout the course of this conversation, definitely leave that down below. And you can just let us know. Type in the chat, yes, that you guys are here, as we love to hear from you. Today, we have Stefan. Stefan is an entrepreneur, writer, and speaker passionate about remote work, diversity, inclusion, and the people behind tech. As a journalist, Stefan has interviewed over 200 entrepreneurs on topics ranging from fundraising to starting a business to company culture. As the founder and CEO of Pulse Blueprint Media, he runs 2 successful publications and helps clients with branding, content marketing, and building successful remote work cultures. And so Stefan has a background in working remote, but also intertwining work as we inch closer to a future of remote as it pertains to inclusion. And today we're going to tackle some of the questions of inclusion that also go into diversity, but now also remote. And so, Stefan, what are some of the challenges that we're now facing as we move towards this inevitable future?
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's a lot of these concepts, diversity and inclusion is something that everyone's probably heard at this point, and we all understand it differently. So just to level set, when I talk about diversity and inclusion, I mean the process of helping everyone do their best work. So that may include some specific accommodations or specific initiatives, but it's really about making sure that every single employee can do their best work. And then we have this remote situation. And I think it's worth mentioning off the bat that we're not really in a true remote work situation. We're in pandemic lockdown situation. So in that context, some of the challenges and opportunities that we're seeing in terms of doing your best work in lockdown, and that's a really tough scenario, is one, I think that an obvious elephant in the room that will need to be addressed is concerns around mental health. And that's going to affect everybody in different ways. And I think some of the main challenges there are more around isolation, but also anxiety of not being able to do your work correctly because you're so used to being in an office and then suddenly thrust into this remote work situation. So as you think about the mental health impact, there's going to have downstream effects around how companies are structured, as well as how communication happens. The other side of inclusion that I actually think is really positive from remote work is that the structure of remote work can actually remove a lot of barriers to people doing great work. So if people need to care for folks in their home, whether that's child or families, working from home is a fantastic way to not have to worry about what's going on around the house. If people need to control their own environment for their own reasons, working remotely can be fantastic. And under non-lockdown conditions, the idea of being able to work from anywhere, working while you're traveling, working while seeing friends or family is incredibly freeing and amazing and can make a lot more opportunity for people. So there definitely are the challenges around mental health and how we structure communication, and we can talk about that. But there's also the upside that I want to bring up in the context of everyone being able to do their best work. Remote work is an amazing tool to empower more people to do that.
And so, Stefan, it sounds like remote work does make diversity and inclusion a lot easier. But let's level set a little bit. What is the positives for organizations to look into? Like, what are the benefits essentially as they look more towards having more D&I?
D&I and in a remote setting too, you know, again, thinking about helping people do their best work. A company is going to get the productivity and engagement. I think there are tons of studies on that. But on a more individual level, um, every time an employee is able to produce their best work, they have not only a better feeling themselves. I mean, I don't know about you, but I know that I've had that experience. I think a lot of folks have, when you've delivered amazing work. And it was because you had a clear ask and it was well communicated and you were able to do your part. And it just felt so, so good. And that feeling is something that we can have in all of our work. And when we think about it from a remote context, a business also gets the financial benefits of it, as does the employee. So you have things like you don't need to commute. That is an hour a day and can cost hundreds of dollars a month. You don't need to spend money on specific work clothing, the performative aspects of work. You can dress a little more casually, as I'm in a t-shirt today. And on the company side, not needing, downtown rents in order to attract top talent is an incredible cost savings. So that's some of the benefits there. There's the time benefit, the money benefit, but also that really personal, we've all had the moment where we've delivered something amazing. And when that's supported and our employer supports us in doing that, that just feels fantastic.
And so it sounds like there's lots of benefits of not only just working remote permanently, as
Mm-hmm.
we Twitter and IBM announced that they will be shifting a lot more employees to working remote permanently.
Yeah.
Also having a lot more, I guess, bringing out the best of more people just
Yep.
overall impacts the organization as a whole. And so what if you're with an organization or you're working with a leadership team who may not see this value? How do we really work towards getting them on board to D&I initiatives, diversity and inclusion initiatives?
Sure. So when we're talking about D&I, getting people on board is, one, going to be about money. And, I don't want to attack anyone in particular, but there's a leak out of a large technology company that they're slashing their inclusion budgets. And one of the questions that I was thinking and I've had asked is, what is an inclusion budget? What does that actually mean? Why does that actually matter? And, again, these are unsubstantiated rumors, but it brings up an interesting conversation where an inclusion budget, some people might think, oh, that's for somebody else. And, that's not me. I don't qualify under the D&I umbrella. But when you think about diversity and inclusion from a helping people do their best work perspective, then it makes a lot of sense to think, okay, you need some resources behind it. So on a really specific level, and very much what's happening right now is, for example, helping people set up a remote work setup and getting access to an ergonomic chair or a stand-up desk could be something that would be under the inclusion budget, because in many cases it could be legally required in an office, but it also falls under the true umbrella of helping people do their best work. And if companies are now cutting that budget, there's a risk that if people are being asked to work remotely for the next few months or even permanently, as in the case of Twitter and Open Text here in Canada as well has announced, and BMO has announced that they are looking at moving up to 80% of their people in some form of permanent remote work, then that's a massive impediment to actually being able to do your job. And then you start to lose the benefits of remote work. A lot of studies out of Harvard and Stanford in particular have found that remote work is a massive productivity boon and a massive happiness boon for employees. But if you're not able to empower that, and D&I is really about empowering great work, then you miss out. So it's not just a question of closing a budget for certain types of people, but it can actually have direct impacts on every single employee, especially in a remote work context.
And so what are some of the ways that this inclusion budget has gone above and beyond to really include much of their diverse work staff? What are some of the great examples that you've come across?
Absolutely. So, when I think about empowering people to do their best work and D&I more broadly, one of the biggest things, and I actually just interviewed an entrepreneur about this concept, is communication anxiety. And the idea that you log into Slack and you see 50 notifications and it's incredibly stressful for you. And I don't know if you've had that. I certainly have, where the problem is not that you have a lot of people messaging you, but it's that you have to triage everything. You don't know what's important. You don't know what matters. You don't know what is, a fun meme until you actually wade through everything. Whereas this entrepreneur, and his name is Floyd Marinescu, he runs a company called C4 Media, and the interview actually just went live. But he talked a lot about communication triage and reducing communication anxiety with employees, where you use different tools for specific kinds of interaction. And in his case, he uses Slack for project management, email for non-essential but work communication, and then Workplace by Facebook is kind of the virtual water cooler. And that is absolutely an investment in company productivity, but it's also an investment in D&I when you have two things at play. You have one, a clear sense of what needs to go where, which can help people do their best work and feel like they know what's actually going on and feel welcomed in the work environment and not kind of thrust out by all this crap. But also in the specific one around the workplace tool for kind of a virtual water cooler, that's where you can share personal stories. That's where you can share fun memes or things that are going on in a community if there are other employees that live in a similar vicinity to you. Because again, remote work doesn't necessarily mean that nobody's ever in the same city. The other thing that Floyd does that I want to bring up as a great example that actually I've seen quite a few entrepreneurs doing in a remote work context, but also in the office, is starting meetings with a little bit of non-work time, just a couple minutes. It's not meant to absolutely crush your meeting productivity, but it's giving everyone the opportunity to say a couple words about how they're feeling or what they're up to, or share a story if they want to. So that opportunity really speaks to the inclusion element, and it makes inclusion part of a process that actually doesn't cost much, which is great, and is really just about helping people feel included. So when we think about budgets, they should be, tools that actually empower better work. For example, something like a virtual water cooler, whatever platform you want to use, that costs a bit of money, but has a lot of value because it gives people the opportunity to connect on a more human level. But then on the process level, it's just about giving people the opportunity to share their stories and share who they are at work. And frankly, own up to if they're having a bad day, because we all do sometimes. There are days when you get up and you just don't really want to do much work. It's just a tough day. And that process allows for that. It allows you to be human, which is a critical part of D&I and a critical part of being able to do your job well.
And it sounds like you touched a lot on this, particularly just the inclusion of everybody, giving a person a chance to speak, feel like they're part of the team before meetings, and using virtual water coolers. Now let's play a scenario. Let's say you are, prior to COVID, felt out of place because you are the minority in the group, and now you're transitioning remote, and you just can't help but feel that there's a lot of, I guess, out of place that you may feel because now you're not seeing people on a day-to-day basis. And so, how does HR, how do leadership teams now approach those situations?
Yeah, I love this question because there's actually so much that you can do. I think a lot of people mistakenly assume that remote work means you're alone. And I think obviously with most people trying remote work for the first time during a pandemic, I get where that thought comes from. They're not wrong to feel a bit alone because frankly, we're all, under isolation. But to the question about what leaders can actually do, if you think about the process of inclusion, there's that saying that, diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusion is being welcomed in and made part of the conversation. Taking that from a leadership perspective, from an HR perspective, there's some super tangible things that you can do. So something as simple as asking someone for their perspectives can massively increase that feeling of connection. And it does it in two ways. One, there's the literal, you are asking me, and that brings me in. That's a signal to everyone else in the room that you value it, that you value me, in my opinion. But the other side is a bit deeper, is that anytime we invest resources into something, it's a proof point that it matters. So just that simple ask, investing your social resource to ask for an opinion, can bring someone in and help them feel more connected. On a more process level, you can implement something like that communication triage example that I shared before, where you have a space to share jokes and fun things and talk about your life a little bit more, and that's actively encouraged. You can bring up a one-word emotion conversation at the beginning of every work meeting so that everyone is invited to share how they're feeling and share a story if they want to. But the higher level side of things is not just to talk about it from a leadership level. I think while it's very, very important that a leader talks about the necessity of anything, any priority should be talked about, but it should also be acted out as well. And that's going to appear not just in the simple one-to-one actions like asking someone for their feedback, but also in how you design your processes. So when we think about things like remote hiring, sending someone ahead of time some expectations so that they know what's going to happen. Same thing for when they get hired. Having a ways we work document can really help somebody understand how they can place themselves in the ecosystem. So it's not just a matter of the company always having to reach out and always having to pull someone in. A big part of inclusion is allowing people to make their own choice about how they want to be included and how they will fit into an ecosystem by being really transparent about what that ecosystem is all about. And in a remote work context, that also directly ties to productivity, because there really isn't that opportunity to tap someone on the shoulder and ask them what's going on. So if you don't have things really clearly stated in a virtual workplace, then you're gonna have a productivity hit too. It's not just about feeling like you are welcome.
Mm-hmm. And again, you touched on this towards the end about the initiatives that the individual could take. And that sometimes might be the most difficult conversation that they can have, is if they feel that they would like to be more included, but then it's to now put that into conversation, or to put that onto an ask. Especially if you work in a large organization where you feel like a cog and you'd like to be more involved. And so what maybe advice would you have for that person on how they can position themselves to play a bigger role or to become more involved?
Absolutely. I think if you are feeling left out, I empathize with this. When I've used to work in offices, there were days where I felt super left out and just like I didn't fit. No one was being mean to me per se. I certainly don't mean that, but just fundamentally felt off. And what I realized is that so much about the company is twofold. One, it's taking part in the business of the business, but then two, it's being as open as you can to yourself and opening yourself up to other people. So business of the business, what I mean by that is taking a look at what the company vision and goals are, which again is why this is incredibly important that companies are as transparent as possible with these things, and just pitching ideas, just trying to help out as much as possible. Or if you see someone else taking on an initiative, offer your assistance if possible. Or if an initiative's on the table, put your hand up and say you'll give it a shot. So some of it is just pushing yourself beyond the pain and the fear, and I feel you on that, because every single time I've ever stepped up for an initiative, I was really scared. But that ties into the second piece, which is when you open yourself up as much as possible to people, people can actually help you. And one quote that I really, really like about this is from Arlen Hamilton. She's a venture capitalist out of Silicon Valley. And she talks about being yourself so that people who are looking for people like you can find you. And in any workforce, whether you end up staying remote or whether you go back to an office, if you're feeling like you're left out and you're feeling like you aren't being considered or aren't being present, see if there are ways to make yourself as present as possible. You know, while leaders should absolutely look for their team members and ask them to contribute, maybe you should also offer your own views and, you know, step up into the conversation and step up into who you really are. And then on the other side, be okay with helping somebody and try to offer value first. I think that's something that comes up a lot in marketing and sales, is offer value first before you ask for value in return. And it's the same concept with wanting to be included. You know, ask how you can help and ask how you can be a part of it, and grow from there.
It's amazing, very actionable, very tangible. But that is all the time that we have today. Thank you, Stefan, for sharing a lot of that. I think it's very, very helpful. And to everyone at home, thank you all for tuning in. This is all the time that we have. But if you do have any further questions, or would you like to book Stefan for working with your organization or for a custom virtual event, or if you have a D&I budget that you would like to bring in someone for a workshop, definitely shoot me an email and I'd love to help get you connected. We will also be continuing our virtual speaker series with a sense-making conversation tomorrow with Anne Connolly. This is a longer continuation of our conversation. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. As a blockchain social impact speaker, Anne loves sharing her passion for blockchain and its potential to change the world. And so that's going to be very, very exciting. And I'm looking forward to you guys who get to tune in. Once again, Stefan, I just want to thank you for coming
Thank
in.
you.
And for everyone at home, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected. We'll talk soon.